Welcome to You Talk. We listen, where you, the listener, are in charge.
Yeah, that's right.
So got a stack of articles, a research paper, a book,
Yeah.
anything you're just dying to unpack, send it our way.
Exactly.
We'll roll up her sleeves.
That's what we do.
We'll extract the good stuff, the aha moments, the insights you might have missed if you only had like 5 minutes to look at it.
Yeah, and you don't have to read it all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like having a personal research assistant, but way more fun.
Much more fun.
And you don't have to do any of the reading.
That's the key.
Speaking of making life easier.
Oh, right.
Huge thanks to our sponsor, OtisWho Network.
Yeah, thanks to them.
For making this this deep dive possible. Now, you sent us, for our very first deep dive, a collection of articles.
Ooh, interesting.
About a case.
Okay.
A heartbreaking case. Really, 50-year-old Jazmir Tucker.
Okay.
Was fatally shot by police in Akron, Ohio on Thanksgiving night.
Oh, wow.
And
on Thanksgiving.
It's heavy stuff, for sure.
Very heavy.
But that's why we're here, right?
Yeah, we're here to unpack it.
To wade through it all together.
That's it.
And I have to be honest, just reading the headlines, I was hit by the sheer tragedy of it.
Right.
A young life cut short.
Of course.
And all the swirling questions about, police use of force.
Yeah, especially in light of...
In light of other incidents we've seen.
We've seen a lot. Yeah, exactly.
So where do we even begin?
Well, it's definitely a case that raises more questions than answers.
Deeper questions than answers, yeah.
But let's start with what we do know.
Okay, sounds good.
Laying the groundwork before we get into some of the thornier detail.
Details, yeah.
Okay. From the initial police reports, it seems that 2 officers responded to calls about gunshots.
On Thanksgiving night, they encountered Jazmir.
Okay.
And things escalated quickly, leading to a chase.
I see.
One officer fired. Jazmir was fatally wounded.
Yeah.
And later, a gun was found in his zip pocket.
So that's the bare bones.
That's like the
official narrative.
Official narrative.
Yeah.
But the body cam footage,
yes,
released by the Akron Police Department, paints a much more complicated picture.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How so?
Well, it's grainy.
I see.
The lighting's poor.
Okay.
And what led up to that fatal shot isn't entirely clear. So that's where things get really troubling, right?
Yeah, did that sound troubling?
We're talking about delay.
Okay.
A significant delay.
Right.
Before officers even approach Jazmir.
So after he's
down.
Okay.
The footage shows about 7 minutes.
Wow.
But the family's lawyers are saying it was closer to 10.
7 minutes, 10 minutes, that's an agonizing length of time.
Yeah.
When we're talking about a gunshot wound.
Absolutely.
It raises so many questions.
It does.
Like, did the officers believe Jazmir still posed a threat?
Right.
Were they hesitant?
Why the delay?
Yeah, these are the kinds of questions investigators are hopefully going to be asking.
I would certainly hope so.
Yeah.
Now, as we dig deeper, we're seeing some strong reactions.
Okay.
And they're not all pointing in the same direction.
Oh, interesting.
Mayor Shamus Milik hasn't had back.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, man.
He called the footage deeply troubling. Questioning why rifles were used in the first place.
Interesting.
Why those body cams weren't immediately activated.
Yeah.
And, of course, the delayed medical aid.
Right.
It sounds like he's not buying the initial police account.
Not at face value?
At face value.
No.
Yeah. So
he's signaling loud and clear that this needs to be a thorough, transparent investigation.
Right.
Which is what the community deserves.
Absolutely.
But then you have the other side of the coin. The police union president, Brian Lucy, who has gone on record with full support for the officers involved, stating his belief that they'll be justified once all the facts are out.
It's a stark contrast, for sure.
It is, yeah.
And then, of course, there's Jazmir's family.
Right, of course. They're facing
an unimaginable loss.
Unimaginable, yeah.
Reading Ashley Green's statement, Jazmir's mother, about seeing her son on the ground with no one helping him, it just, it tears at you.
And of course.
And their lawyers are making it very clear.
Okay.
They believe the officers didn't know Jazmir had a gun until after he was shot.
So that challenges the whole notion that he was an immediate threat.
It does.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that we're dealing with multiple narratives here.
Right.
Each one carries immense weight.
Yeah.
its own emotions, its own potential biases.
It's on all of us.
Yeah.
Not just the investigators, to be cautious about jumping to conclusions.
Yeah. Right.
We need to let the evidence lead the way.
Absolutely. But even with all the legal back and forth,
Yeah.
we can't lose sight of the human element.
Of course.
Jazmir's family has shared stories about him, describing him as a great kid, always laughing, loved by everyone.
That makes this whole thing,
It does.
the tragedy of it, even more profound.
It really does.
It reminds us that beyond the legal proceedings, the debates over procedure, a young life was lost.
Right.
A family shattered.
Yeah.
A community left trying to pick up the pieces.
And that community.
Yeah.
Well, they're not staying silent.
No, they're not.
Not at all. There have been protests in downtown Akron. Led by Jazmir's grandfather, Gary Green, demanding justice for his grandson.
Yeah.
And you can just feel the raw emotion there.
Right.
The anger.
The exhaustion.
The exhaustion, yeah.
I bet.
One protester, Tara, voiced what I think a lot of people are feeling.
Yeah.
Especially black mothers.
Especially.
A constant fear.
Yeah.
The never-ending worry about their son's safety.
Yeah, and those protests, those voices, they highlight something much bigger.
Right.
A deep-seated mistrust, a tension that often exists between communities of color and law enforcement.
Especially after high-profile incidents.
Especially after.
Like this one.
Yeah.
And this isn't Akron's first time dealing with this kind of tragedy.
Really?
It's hard not to think about the $4.8 million settlement the city paid to Jayland Walker's family.
Oh, wow.
After he was killed by police back in 2022.
That case was deeply disturbing.
Yeah.
Walker was shot 94 times.
94 times.
After a traffic stop.
Wow.
For a broken taillight.
The
public outcry was immense.
Huge.
The calls for accountability deafening.
And it just adds another layer to all of this.
Oh, how so?
Because the Ohio Supreme Court recently ruled the city could keep the names of the officers who shot Walker confidential.
Does that build trust?
Yeah.
Does that make people feel like the system is working?
I'm not so sure.
I understand your skepticism, that ruling, and then this case with Jazmir.
Right.
They underscore how much work there is to do, how much ground we need to cover to build trust and ensure true accountability when it comes to police conduct.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about cases involving Black victims.
It feels like a broken record.
I know.
A cycle we can't seem to break.
Yeah.
Tragic incident, protests, calls for reform.
Right.
And yet, those underlying issues remain.
You've hit on something crucial.
Yeah.
These incidents don't exist in a vacuum.
No.
They're part of a much larger conversation.
Right.
A national one.
Yeah.
About police use of force, racial disparities in the justice system.
Right.
And the urgent need for meaningful, lasting reform.
It feels like we've been having this conversation for a long time.
We have.
Yeah.
And Jazmir's case forces us to ask, where do we go from here?
Right.
What are the next steps?
What are the next steps?
Yeah.
Tough questions.
They are, but we need to ask them.
We do.
Yeah. It's not enough to just ask the questions.
Right.
We need to kind of understand the process, the mechanisms at play.
Okay.
Right now, the investigation is being handled by the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation.
Okay.
And the Akron Police Department is conducting their own internal review.
Okay.
All of that will eventually go before a grand jury.
Okay.
Who will decide whether or not to press charges against the officer who shot Jazmir.
Okay, so that grand jury decision, that's a pivotal moment.
Huge.
What will they be looking at?
Well,
what kind of evidence will carry weight in their decision?
Grand juries in cases like this have a tough job.
I bet.
They're sifting through a mountain of information. Witness statements, forensic evidence, expert testimony.
Yeah.
And then there's the body cam footage, which we've already talked about.
Of course.
But it's key.
Yeah.
They'll be analyzing every second, trying to piece together exactly what happened.
And it's not just about what happened.
Right. It's also about...
But about what's legal.
What's legal, yeah. They have to determine if the officer's actions were justified within the bounds of the law.
That's where it gets really complex, right?
It does.
The law, police procedure. I'm guessing there are a lot of nuances at play here.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
When we talk about a police shooting being justified, it often comes down to the concept of reasonable belief.
Okay.
An officer is legally allowed to use deadly force if they believe. And this is important.
Okay.
Reasonably believe.
I see.
That they or someone else is in imminent danger of serious harm or even death.
Reasonable belief.
Yeah.
That feels subjective, doesn't it?
It absolutely can be.
Okay.
And that's why these cases are so difficult, so fraught.
Right.
It's not always black and white.
Right.
The grand jury has to consider everything. The officer's training, the information they had at the time, how Jazmir was behaving, any other factor that might have influenced that split-second decision to use lethal force.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is.
Okay.
And that's what they'll be using to measure that reasonable belief.
So it's not just about whether Jazmir posed a threat,
Right.
but whether a reasonable officer in that exact situation would have perceived a threat.
Exactly. And that's a critical distinction.
I see.
Imagine yourself in that officer's shoes, in the dark, responding to a call about gunshots, adrenaline pumping.
Yeah.
It's about trying to understand the context, the mindset within the framework of the law.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's still heavy stuff.
It is.
That grand jury is essentially deciding whether someone will face criminal charges for taking a life.
There's no denying the weight of that decision.
Yeah.
The consequences that ripple outward.
Sure.
And it often hinges on those interpretations of the law.
Right.
Those assessments of evidence, those judgments about whether an action was reasonable or not.
Right.
It's a lot to carry.
It is. And while we wait for the investigation to unfold, for that grand jury to reach a decision,
right,
I keep coming back to Jazmir's family.
Of course.
They're dealing with a loss no parent should have to face.
It's true.
The community is hurting, angry, and the city is wrestling with these incredibly difficult questions about police accountability. Again.
You're right to bring it back to that human element.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that these cases, these legal battles,
yeah,
they're about real people.
Right.
Real lives.
Yeah.
And the impact of these events, these tragedies, they go far beyond the courtroom.
They do.
Yeah.
Okay, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to pose a question to our listener. Something to really think about.
Sounds good.
Imagine you're on that grand jury.
Okay.
What would you need to know?
Oh, good question.
What information, what evidence would be crucial for you to make a fair and informed decision in Jazmir Tucker's case?
Yeah.
It's a tough question.
It is.
But I think it's one we all need to consider as we try to understand these complex issues.
Right. Yeah, it's a powerful question to consider, isn't it?
It is.
Because it highlights the weight of that responsibility, the impact a grand jury has in these cases.
For sure.
They're the ones weighing the evidence, considering those different perspectives, and ultimately making a judgment that could have huge consequences.
Huge.
Not just for the officer involved, but for Jazmir's family.
Of course.
For the entire community.
Yeah. It really underscores how important it is for grand jurors to be informed.
Right.
To be engaged.
Yeah.
To approach their role with the gravity it deserves. This isn't just about legalities.
No, it's about
lives.
It's about lives, absolutely.
Right.
And that's where public awareness comes in, where these conversations we're having become so crucial.
Right.
We all have a role to play.
Absolutely.
In shaping how we as a society think about policing, about justice, about accountability.
It's not something that happens in a vacuum.
No.
You're so right.
We're all in this together.
Cases like this one in Akron. And sadly, there are so many others.
I know.
Across the country.
It's true.
There's stark reminders that we haven't figured this out yet.
We haven't.
These issues demand our attention.
Our attention, yes.
Our willingness to grapple with complexity.
That's key.
And our commitment to engage in these
difficult
but necessary dialogues.
Absolutely.
We need to move beyond the hashtags.
The sound bites.
The
knee-jerk reactions, and really dig into the nuances. We need to understand the historical context.
Yeah.
The systemic factors at play. And most importantly, the human stories at the heart of these tragedies.
Jazmir's death can't be just another statistic.
Right.
Another headline that fades from memory.
Yeah.
We have to keep asking those tough questions.
Keep pushing.
Pushing for transparency.
And
demanding justice.
Justice.
Not just for Jazmir.
No.
But for all the victims of police violence.
Right.
And for the communities that are disproportionately impacted.
Yes.
By these systemic issues.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
And I hope our listener, you listening right now, will take this deep dive as a starting point.
Yeah.
A spark to ignite your own exploration.
I love that.
Your own conversations. And your own commitment to creating a more just and equitable world.
That's a perfect note to end on.
It is.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into such a complex and challenging issue.
It was a good one.
We encourage you to keep learning.
Keep learning.
Keep engaging.
Keep engaging.
And keep advocating for change.
That's it.
And remember, we're always here to help you navigate the information landscape.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep those sources coming.
Keep them coming.
And keep those minds open.
Open minds for an open world.
Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.